Hey, what's up, everyone? Looks like we are live, so welcome back to Norm Hunter. This is the third episode. I'm here with National Master Todd Bryant, who's kind of like the first Norm Hunter in this series. I don't know what this eventually will turn out to be. I don't. It was my dream to make it like a pseudo, almost like a reality show, where like contenders come on and we try to like turn them into champions. So I don't know what it's gonna turn out to be, but this is where things have kind of begun. So Todd has been working on his training plan, and let's quickly review that. I'm going to put it up on the screen. So Todd, you've been working on two books, Solving the Exercises in Perfect Your Chess, which a lot of very strong players swear by, and going through at least one game of How Karpov Wins, this collection of games. So how's that all going for you?
It's been going good. Perfect Your Chess has gotten harder in the past week. At some point early in the past week, I crossed the number 30 mark in the set of 100 that I'm currently working on, and that means that the difficulty of the problems went up. So he breaks the problems into like FM, IM, and GM strength. So I went from FM puzzles to IM puzzles, and there's a big difference in uh, the complexity of the puzzles. I feel like most of the FM puzzles, a lot of them focused around finding like one shot, and if you found that shot and maybe a couple of justifications, you could solve the puzzle. With this new batch of puzzles, there's a lot of positions that require sort of thicker analysis. Like you have to calculate 4 or 5 lines to really get the solution. And there's also a bunch of puzzles where you really have to search for some idea that is very hidden. It's either like a really sort of audacious tactical shot that you wouldn't find, or it's like some quiet retreating move in a position that looks like you should be checking and attacking, something like that. So these have been much more challenging, but I think currently a good level for me. I've been batting around 50% once the puzzle switched over from FM to IM strength. Um, I noticed a couple themes that were interesting this week as I went through some of the puzzles. There was sort of a pattern that popped up where in some of the puzzles, you would just spend a lot of time searching for the idea. Like there were a few puzzles where like it looked like you were completely lost and losing material in every line, and you had to find some defensive move that was really hidden. And so in those puzzles, you would just kind of sit and like look for ideas and not calculate so much, but just kind of look for something that worked. Whereas the other sort of half of the puzzles, it seems like there was like a thicket of variations that you had to work through. Like there was some attacking move that was relatively obvious, but you had to find all of their defensive tries and sort of find the correct way in all of those different variations.
Right.
There was one more big pattern that came up that I wanted to ask you about, which was in that second group. I noticed that I have this bad habit, and I've always had this habit while calculating, where while I'm trying to work everything out, I end up repeating playing over the same like four first moves in my head, like over and over. Um, and I was wondering if you had any advice or insight into that habit.
Yeah, definitely. Are you familiar with the technique of using stepping stones in your calculation?
I'm not sure.
So yeah, basically like the idea is if let's say you're calculating some line, like bishop takes h7, king takes h7, knight g5 check, king g6, queen g4, right? And then black to play. And you have a lot of threats. Black has some moves. They can play like maybe f5 in this position, or maybe they have like knight takes e5 or some random moves. So that seems like a critical branching point where you might then go out and look at like three different variations, because black might have three defenses there that make sense. So rather than calculating out every single time bishop h7, knight g5, queen g4, you kind of fix that position in your mind so that you can kind of return to it. I'm sure your visualization is like already good enough that you'll be able to do this. It's just a matter of like kind of fixating on it and then continuing the calculation from there. It's also a very common thing to do when you feel like there should be some kind of answer, in the variation, but you're not quite sure. That's a great point to use a stepping stone, or if you feel like there's a big decision to make. For example, if you're calculating some forced line and then 3 moves down the line, you see that you're going to have to decide whether to trade queens or not trade queens. And then you have like this huge branch, like this huge option, and that is a great point to use a stepping stone, where you just fix that position, you calculate the line where you trade queens. Okay, is that endgame good? I'm not sure. Then you go back to that fixed position, then you calculate the line where, okay, you keep queens on the board and see what happens there. So this is kind of how you save time to in the calculation process. And I find that it also really helps with finding candidate moves, because what a lot of players will do is they'll look for candidates on the first move of the variation, and then once they choose a move, they'll just kind of calculate the most obvious responses without really looking for options. And then if there's some kind of unexpected resource on move 3, then they'll absolutely miss it because they're just not visualizing clearly enough and they're not looking for enough options there. But if you use this technique of stepping stones and you fix a position and then you kind of fixate on it, then you can take like a really fresh look at that position, because you might have 4 or 5 candidate moves even there, and one of them turns out to be much stronger than the others, but you're not going to realize it until you actually find the move, right, and actually start like considering it and breaking down the variations.
That's interesting. I imagine that it probably requires a little bit of discipline, a little practice to kind of fix the position in your head and not drop it or jump to some other line or something like that. So that's something maybe I can try to do a little more slowly and deliberately in my solving this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe after we go through the game, like if we have time, we can just do a couple exercises. I'm sure I can find some that like will kind of challenge you to like visualize something and then calculate from that point, basically.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's actually really important thing, especially when you're trying to find some deeper point in combinations, is being able to do that. And how about this Karpov book? Do you feel like you're getting much out of the annotated games?
Yeah, the Karpov book is kind of like the lighter thing that I do. It's probably like 20% or less of the total time that I've been spending on training, but the games have been pleasant to go through. I considered actually maybe adding like 1 game per day for the following week, just because the Karpov games are usually like a relatively quick thing. But yeah, a couple of the games in the past week were impressive. He had a couple of positional wins where he found like just sort of like slow, grindy ways to play that I feel like I would not have found in a game. I would have been inclined to like rush ahead and do something concrete immediately. So that was interesting. And also interesting was that he actually played a 6 bishop g5 Najdorf, which is the opening that I play against the Najdorf, and what we'll see in this upcoming game. Mm-hmm. In like the last game that I looked at, I was a little surprised, because Karpov usually plays like bishop e2 or quieter systems typically against the Najdorf.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect him to drop the hammer with bishop g5. So that's interesting. Was that like a super tactical game, or was that just more of a squeeze?
It was an attacking crush, actually. So the guy tried to go into the poison pawn and he declined it with like a knight b3 move. And then he had like more typical Najdorf play, but he got in like a break in the center and he had some nice exchange sacrifice. It was a typical Karpov attacking game where like he found all the right tactics, but his attack was very well prepared and like positionally sound.
Gotcha. That's great. And sorry if you mentioned this already, how long does it usually take you to go through one game, like playing it out, on the board and stuff?
Relatively quickly, because the annotations in the book are very light. They're mostly verbal annotations with like a couple of lines here and there. So we're looking at like 15 minutes typically on average for a game.
Cool. All right. Well, let's switch over to the board. And so you played another training game this week. This was G60.
Yes, it was 60 plus 20 again, and it was another small child student of Alex Lunderman. This one was a little higher rated. He was like 21, 30 USCF. This kid.
Gotcha. That's okay. It's pretty decent rating. Um,
Yeah, this is like a very typical person like that I would face at tournaments, like young kid 2000 to 2200.
right. Yeah, yeah. They're often like very sharp. They typically have some very like clear weaknesses. If they don't feel comfortable in the opening, they will usually kind of misplay the position very quickly because they just don't have a lot of experience in different structures. And they might make mistakes out of lack of experience, like missing resources and certain ideas. They're usually not great in endgames, but this is all changing actually for the most part. Kids are becoming like much more solid and like they know how to just like not blunder and not make like too many weaknesses. And yeah, I think in general they're just getting harder and harder to beat.
That is definitely true. Yeah. I've always scored relatively well, like I think a little bit better than I'm supposed to against little kids because I feel like my style is similar to little kid, but I maybe have a little more experience. So I always thought of my style as like little kid plus.
Right. So you like to attack, but you know how to rein it in also.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm. Okay, so we get bishop g5, f4, bishop e7, and you were telling me you were working with the Negi repertoire books, right?
Yes, and actually, I knew that my opponent was going to play this line because I was able to look at his chess.com history a little bit, so I had a little bit of preparation here.
Gotcha. Okay, so take us through this. Knight c6 looks dubious, and had
Yeah,
he played this move before?
yeah. So what was interesting was that he had played this move before, but he had played it in this position with h6 and bishop h4 inserted. So in the main lines of the this system in the bishop g5 Najdorf, it's valid to play with h6 and bishop h4 inserted or not. But it was a little strange that after I castled here, he started thinking and then threw out knight c6. So it suggested to me that maybe in his previous games, he was beginning to wing it at around this point and typically relied on the knight c6 move. But in that other position, I had prepared a little. I looked it up in the database, and the first thing that sort of popped up in ChessBase was this annotated game by Tatiana Kosentseva, who's like a strong, like a top women's player
Mm-hmm.
from Russia. I think she's no longer active, but she's like one of two sisters. They're
That's right.
both like 2600-ish or something like that. So basically, she had annotated this system and written like a nice little mini article of like what you should do and improvement on her game and the main ideas. So I felt quite comfortable here. Yeah, basically knight c6 is running into this knight takes c6 move, and black is losing control of e5, which is important. And he has to make the choice of either putting his queen on the c6 square where it doesn't want to be, or going for this sort of undesirable pawn structure with b takes c6. And I think that either way, white is getting a nice advantage here.
Mm-hmm. So how deep were you prepared here?
Um, I had just like a handful of lines, but they went out through like move, I don't know, like 15 or something like that. But it wasn't heavy preparation. Like I think I reviewed the lines for like 15 minutes. And mostly I felt comfortable with the ideas.
Oh, I meant in the game. At what point did it deviate from your prep?
Um, well, actually, probably right now because I had prepared the position with h6 and bishop h4.
Ah, I see.
And
So you
and she
okay?
played, yeah, he played knight c6 right away. Um, there were a couple of points where it could have transposed into what I saw in chess space, but I was mostly on my own, but in a very very similar position from this point. I think that when I prepared, I briefly looked at knight c6. I like played knight c6 immediately by accident or something, and I saw that the computer suggestion was knight takes c6 right away. But
Mm-hmm.
that was the most concrete position I had in this exact position.
And what was your prep with these two moves inserted? Like you're taking on c6 here as well.
Yeah, yeah. You take on c6 and then play similar things to the game. So you play bishop e2, and if they play rook b8, as he did in the game, trying to prepare um, b5, because the idea here is that if they play b5 right away, you have e5, which is hitting the knight and also hitting the loose queen.
Mm-hmm.
So we see that like the queen is a little exposed on the c6 square. So he
Right.
plays rook b8 to try to prepare this instead. In the game, Kostya played queen g3, which worked out for her, but then she suggested this improvement of queen d3, which is just moving the queen off this diagonal, preparing e5, bishop f3 might come into the game, and this is very pleasant for
Yeah,
white.
this looks really annoying. Okay, so then, yeah, in the game, you basically just try to do something similar. I mean, it feels like, if anything, this h6 and inserted would help black maybe in some lines, but without it seems like no reason why this should be a worse version for white.
Yeah, it's a very subtle difference, but h6 controls g5, which is a problem square for him later in the game. You just have to watch out for the fact that when the bishop's on g5, some bishop takes g5 might come with check, and that changes certain lines a little bit.
Right, I see. Okay, so queen c6, you go bishop e2, rook b8, so it doesn't run into e5.
Yeah. The other idea was bishop d7.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, this was where things were a little different, because e5 was the move with h6 and bishop h4 on the board. But here, the bishop is dropping with check, so we have to take on e7 right away. Whereas in the other line, there was the possibility of taking this knight right away and allowing bishop takes h4, and there were some pleasant complications. But
Right.
I think that if something like this happens, like, this still looks quite nice. Like, d6 square is weak, we have the d file. It's hard for them to get their king safe. Like, this looks promising still.
Yeah, it definitely looks dangerous. Yeah, it's really funny. That's one of the big dangers of analyzing with an engine, is that, like, okay, it'll tell you some line works or doesn't work, like this e5 and knight d5 stuff. Then you get to the board and h6 bishop h4 wasn't played. All of a sudden you're here and you realize, oh wait, like knight takes d5, this is hanging with check. And it's like, yeah, well, in this position it doesn't work, so the computer's just like, too bad.
Yeah.
So you have to be like very careful that if you're gonna rely on computer lines, your memory has to be correct, like just like 100%, because it's really easy to confuse yourself over the board, thinking like, oh yeah, I looked at this, but then it turns out you didn't, and then you end up going down a line that is concretely just not working for you. But yeah, this definitely just looks pleasant for white as it is. So he goes rook b8.
Yep.
Queen d3, so same idea.
Yeah, and here, queen d3 just seems like it made sense to me. The computer said the queen g3 was better when I checked after the game.
I see, just in this particular position. So what's going on if black castles?
Yeah, so if you castle, there's some trick of playing e5 right away.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and there's some really impressive shot here, which I think would be a little tricky to find in the game. It's bishop f6 here. With
that's nice.
yeah, this is like really nasty.
Yeah. So I mean, black would have to play g6, but then it's just way too many weaknesses, so it'd be really.
Well, I think we can take on d5, and it's just a loose
oh,
piece
it's just
then.
a piece. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Wow, brutal. This e5 break actually is so powerful here. It's quite thematic. How about bishop takes f6? So bishop f6, ef. Yeah, rook is hanging and mate is hanging. So black has huge problems here.
Yeah, there's no way to trap the queen on b8 or anything like that. It looks like a big problem.
Yeah. I'm always surprised sometimes. Like, it doesn't feel like it's such a dangerous setup for white, but actually this e5 break and bishop f3, bishop d3, these ideas are really unpleasant.
Yeah, I mean, if you're familiar with this system, it kind of makes sense logically because Black has traded the knight on d7 and distracted the queen from c7, right? So those were two pieces that controlled the e5 square in the normal lines. And meanwhile, White has traded off this knight that was on d4, but this has opened up the d file. So, like, it makes sense that like White is ready to explode the center now because Black has given up his defenders there, and we've actually increased our control of the center.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Actually, it's not too surprising. A lot of these knight c6, knight takes c6 lines in the Sicilian end up nice for white. I see them a lot in the Taimanov, actually. Like, there are some lines where white just takes on c6, and it's just kind of like an unpleasant position. But okay, you play queen d3. I can't blame you for that. This is kind of like your prep move, and so it's better to kind of play with a consistent idea, I think, rather than trying to necessarily rely on concrete lines all the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
So b5, e5.
b5 is just not stopping my threat of e5. So it's getting into more trouble.
I see. So black needed to play against this move. Yeah, it's already pretty unpleasant. Let's see what happens if e5, is this a move?
e5. Yeah, e5 was just a move that I never calculated this in the game. I just assumed that it was always bad for him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it's giving up d5 and such. But let's see. My first thought would be to play knight d5 right away.
Wow, yeah, looks pretty dangerous. So knight d5, ed, queen c7.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we want to take this guy.
Take. Okay, I'm gonna try taking with the queen.
Yeah, it's possible that you get away with this. I thought that this is promising, although maybe you can castle now. Although
Yeah.
perhaps white still has some initiative. Well, I don't know. You have annoying checks.
Feels like white could have gotten more than this. Although still, it could still be dangerous. Like, black hasn't fully developed yet. I think maybe kind of the first line to check would be maybe bishop f6 and knight d5. Because maybe black has to go bishop d8 here, which is not the end of the world. But yeah, something like this can be either good for white or like very good for white. Yeah, f5 is definitely a thought here, just to fully restrict black, and then as soon as black castles, we're just pushing like f6 and queen e3, and that's often just really dangerous. Yeah, this might be just really.
Yeah, I think queen g3 is also one idea here as well.
Queen g3 could just be winning a pawn. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, so Yeah, e5 definitely doesn't work. Maybe I think queen c7 would be another move black could try.
Yeah, so then we just keep fighting for e5, I think. And
Hmm.
also look at this pawn on g7.
So queen g3. Oh, and in your notes you put that if h6 included bishop h4, queen c7, then we have e5.
Yeah, they pointed this out as so this transposed back into the preparation, and this is supposed to be a good pawn sacrifice.
Wow. So how does this work? Let's say black just... First question is always, okay, let's say they're greedy and they just grab it.
Yeah, we play something like bishop g3. So you have to check, right?
Yeah. So rook is hanging, and oh, it's already so. All right, let's just say rook a8. You know, gotta be, can't be.
Yeah, and then I think we keep
D6.
the initiative this way.
That's a nice idea. Very nice. Just trading off dark squared bishops, leaving black's king in the center.
Yes, queen is misplaced. There's potential sacrifices on b5, maybe. It looks
Yeah, this is
looks good for a
remarkably
pawn.
unpleasant. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. That's interesting. Because a lot of times, players they get confused when you sack a pawn and like, but black has no structural weaknesses. Like, how exactly is white doing well here? But yeah, it's actually surprisingly hard for black. We would say the queen is misplaced because normally the queen in these structures is placed on c7 and just defending like all these dark squares. Whereas here, like takes, for example, like white's queen is just really annoying, and there's all kinds of like bishop b5, knight b5 ideas, rook e1, knight d5, and of course mate has to be dealt with too. So like, yeah, it's just looks very tough for black. Would slipping in h4 work? Yeah, I think white could include this move. I don't think we really need to, but I'm sure it could be a thing in some lines. So wait, so Icy Stun was asking, yesterday I played a game against a 2100 where I built my advantage gradually to +5 versus the Benoni. Been there. And then I lost my mind totally. Yep, been there. In fact, the first 25 moves of the game I played near perfect, only to play pretty much 10 moves in a row of mistakes. I sensed that I was losing grasp of what to do before those 10 inaccuracies and spent 30 minutes on that first move of the series of mistakes. Any tips on how to work out of this calculation slump where you see 7 good moves? Yeah, that's such a common experience. I feel like I've had that specifically against the Benoni like multiple times, because that opening, it feels like white just gets such a huge advantage at a certain point. You get this like big center, the pieces are better, it's just like it looks crushing, but black always has counterplay, they always have tricks and play, and sometimes their queenside play is stronger than anything you can do in the center. So it's really a tough opening to crack. I've definitely had that experience. Yeah, it always sucks when like during a game you just know that you're starting to miscalculate everything, and it's like the position is kind of slipping from you. I mean, the only thing you can try to do there is to like get yourself to snap out of it, is like try to get like a fresh look at the position, in order to kind of like recenter yourself and just like focus on the basics of what's happening. Like, I mean, the fundamental question, we always have to ask, and you'll see this in like anytime anyone is doing commentary, the essential question they're always trying to answer is like, who's better and why? So if you just start with that question about the position, if you feel like you need to reset, you just try to understand like, okay, what is my advantage here? What is my disadvantage? What are the pros and cons? What are the imbalances? There's like a lot of ways to kind of ask this, but who's better and why? And then you can kind of focus on what's important, and hopefully you can try to be objective about the position as much as you can. If you should be winning through some series of concrete moves, then you have to try to hunker down and just find that. And I think IC, is a strong enough player where like the calculation is definitely there. It's just, sometimes you're just not going to see it, and that's unfortunate. But the more you get into that situation, the better you get at just being able to kind of like calculate it out to a clean finish. Or perhaps you need to work on the technique there, where like, okay, you have a big advantage, now all you need to do is maybe simplify into some endgame and then just win from there. There's kind of a balance. Some players, they try to look for that knockout blow or that checkmate a little bit too much. Other players, they don't do that enough, and they always try to take it to the end game and win cleanly, where they miss like these opportunities to just capitalize in the middle game. So there's definitely going to be some balance there. Well, Todd, actually, we were just talking, I think, before the stream about, you've had experiences against GMs, right, where you had a winning position but then weren't able to convert it.
Yeah, actually, one of the big tragedies of last year and probably of my whole chess career, I was playing a strong GM, Armenian GM, Karin Grigorian, in a position that was somewhat similar to this one, where in a Najdorf he like quickly went wrong and his king was trapped on e7, and I had this huge attack, and for many moves it was +5, but it was the kind of position. It was the kind of +5 where actually White has to play on for a long time to finally capitalize on his advantage. And a strong player is always going to try to find tricks and make it difficult, which is what he did. Move after move after move. And eventually, I reached some position where like I had to grind down like the last little bit of his counterplay, just kind of remove his last few options from the position. And instead, I tried to make some like immediate commitments, which just backfired and fell apart. And I actually ended up losing that game. So I think that sometimes the computer evaluation can kind of mask how human difficult a particular position is. There are lots of +5 positions in like these open Sicilians in particular, also the Benoni, maybe the King's Indian, where there's actually really a lot of work left in the position, even though it's objectively very winning for one side.
Right, yeah, it's not like a real +5, it's a contingent +5. You get your +5 as long as you fill out the survey and like do all the work. But yeah, it's right, you still have to kind of win that position, and Sicilians are just incredibly complicated. So yeah, I would feel like that's definitely one that I wouldn't feel too badly about. I don't know if you've ever had any experiences where you're just like winning the whole game but you just can't quite put it away, and eventually they just kind of escape. They find like some stalemate trick, or like they just find some miracle draw. But that'll definitely happen to most players as they're going up the ranks, especially playing against high rated opponents. I think what players don't realize is that the level of play goes up as you play stronger players, but also the level of resistance goes up, where players are just looking for any last resource they can find, any trick, any way to kind of confuse you in the end game, even if the position just looks really, really bad. As long as there's some kind of hope in the position, a strong player will try to kind of trick their opponent into falling for something. And I feel like it's only after you have multiple experiences where your opponent kind of tricks you, defends really well, and you end up losing the game. I think you need multiple of those games before you really like learn what it takes to like finish out a game from start to finish.
Yeah, it's very difficult to do, and I actually had my first coach, Dave Vigorito, once told me something that I always remembered, that like when you were playing against IMs or GMs and you had a winning position, that like they enter another gear of resilience, he said, which has definitely been my experience. Like you can sometimes see, like even in their body language, that like they just hunker down and they start defending really hard and just finding every last trick. So I've had many of these games. Like the game against the GM was maybe the most notable one of these games, but I've had lots of games against IMs or 2400s or stronger players where I have some great position, but they just keep on testing me, and eventually I fail one of their tests and draw or lose the game.
Yeah, for sure. They get to work, and they usually when we're defending, we try to use like process of elimination, and so they just look at lines and like, okay, that loses easily, he'll find that loses easily, he'll find that. Okay, this doesn't lose so easily, so let's play this and hope for the best. Yeah, but okay, I mean, honestly, I think it's the experience is a huge part of that. So the fact that you're getting these games where like you're winning, you're beating stronger players, you're getting winning positions. I always feel like this is step one of the process, and then step two is working on the conversion. Maybe it means like you need to improve your calculation in order to find like more concrete solutions. Maybe it means you need to work on your like positional decision making, like knowing when to trade down into an endgame where you're only a pawn up. Like maybe you could have gotten more, but it's like a very healthy pawn up, and you know exactly like how to improve your position and how to kind of convert it in the end, which is totally legitimate way of like trying to win a game. But okay, step one is getting those moments and then trying to learn from them, and then eventually like you kind of break through. Like you'll get a chance that you just don't let go in the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Question about norms. No problem. Static. Here, I have a link you can read if you want to learn more about how norms work, because they are pretty complicated, but basically it's a performance in a tournament that like kind of qualifies you to be IM strength or GM strength. So usually you have to get around a performance rating of 2450 for IM, 2600 for GM, which means that you performed at the level of a 2450 player or a 2600 player based on how you scored against the rating of your opponents. And there are a couple of technical details that have to be involved as well. You have to play a certain number of international players. You have to play a certain number of titled players. And there's some requirements on the tournament. It has to be 9 rounds and so on. It's very complicated. A lot of players are GM strength, but don't get the norms because of some technicalities, which is definitely upsetting. But for the most part, it's a pretty fair system, and it's the best thing we have in chess right now. Okay, so yeah, that definitely looked like already a very fun position for white, but now it just gets worse with b5.
Yes, yeah. b5 is not taking this e5 threat seriously enough, and now e5 is pretty good here.
All right, so takes, knight d7, bishop takes e7. That looks like something we want to do. King takes e7, and queen g3. Okay, queen g3 looks very natural and strong. I mean, this position is slightly risky for white because like you're going to have this e5 pawn as a weakness long term, but the dynamics here definitely seem to more than make up for it.
Yeah, I'm just coming into g5, and it seems like black is never going to have a safe king, like for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, is it just lost already?
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's like +7 now or something. So this is an example, actually, of this type of position where like the computer will say that it's +1,000,000, but you're still going to have to play accurately for a long time to convert the advantage. It's not like you're just up a rook.
Yeah, exactly. This is a good example of that. It's like, okay, clearly white is winning, or like should have a winning attack, but only with accurate moves. So if you just play king b1, rook f1, and contingent +7, exactly. Yeah, I think any human looking at this would be like a human evaluation is like +2. It's like clearly very good, but like, yeah, you have to find some moves before you even get that.
Exactly, that was my feeling, and my feeling during the game was more like what you initially said, that I felt like the position was very promising, but like if I overpressed, it would, like, I would lose e5 and fall apart, for example.
Right. Yeah, like there's definitely ways to go wrong here for white. How did it go for you? How was your technique from here?
I played generally well. There was some I like swapped into an endgame at the very end, and there was some like immediate pillar move. And I think I missed a couple of other computery things along the way. Actually, right here, after he played this rook g8 move, which is maybe the best practical defense in the position, I had to make a choice between queen g5 or queen h4, considering winning a pawn on h7. And it was not so clear to me what to do in the game. I eventually settled on this queen g5 decision because I thought that possibly he was mixing it up. Like I couldn't calculate everything. I thought that he was mixing it up. So like this move, queen b4 check, looks like really dangerous because I'm getting this kind of mating net around his king. But I had overlooked a move that the computer pointed out, this rook f1 move. And it's just like black can't do anything about his hanging pawn on f7.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that I had also hallucinated, like in the game, that if I did something slow, he could kick me out of b4 with the move a5, which is not true. So that was like sloppy calculation in this position. Because otherwise, I think black is very tied down here, and the position is quite scary for him.
Right. Yeah, I know. It just looks fantastic for white. So, okay, Icy says, if you have one way to win, I would definitely find it. But when you have so many options, it feels like you take one idea from each. Yeah. I thought about what I did wrong for all of today, and what I came up with was that I should focus on either the king side or queen side, not both like I did. Do I agree? Yeah, I mean, sometimes it makes sense just to focus on one side of the board and you just break through there. You want to have like a consistent plan, like, okay, you're playing against the king, you're playing against the king, or you're playing against the structure, you're playing against the structure, you're trying to trade off pieces. But in many cases, I mean, it does make sense to play on both sides of the board. When you have like a lot of space, we have this principle of two weaknesses for a reason, where you're kind of, this is the only way to win the game is by putting pressure on both sides of the board. So I guess this line, this is what caused you to play queen g5 check.
Yeah, it was that, and also I was concerned that, you know, if something like this, that maybe my queen was misplaced on h7, whereas on g5 it feels like my queen is well placed. Like, it's looking at the dark squares. I have ideas of bishop f3 knight e4 coming up, and so I felt like both lines are probably good, but queen g5 was maybe a bit clearer positionally.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough. So f6, takes, bishop f3, queen c4, rook a1. Yeah, simple chess. Yeah, black's king is just weak. Your pieces are good.
Yeah, like every white piece is like a really good piece now, and black's position is like completely scattered. He has no active pieces currently.
And we're ready to play knight d5. So if b4, then we're just coming in.
Yeah, knight d5 is coming, absolutely. Knight d5, bishop d5 is an idea sometimes, but I think knight d5 right away is looking good.
Yeah. If black liquidates, white is just slightly better though, right? I mean, I guess with the e6 pawn, but that's a huge if. Like, it's just hard to see how black is liquidating anything here. Bishop b7, guess knight d5, and
exactly, yeah. Now the bishop hits e6 at the end.
Yeah. Okay, how about king f7? Let's try this one. How do we proceed here?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I thought that bishop h5 was good here, because my rook comes to f1 if g6.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, king e7, still knight d5. Nice. g6, rook f1. This is great.
Yeah, this is just GG. And I think that if he takes on h5, then I can check him on g5 again, and the f file is open, and it's also bad.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So black tried h6, queen e5. Right, knight d5 check, king f7, and then queen is kind of hanging. I mean, I guess you could go bishop h5, but maybe no need.
Oh, I thought that knight d5 check, knight d5 check, queen takes d5.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Black can just do this one. I thought we could take here. We would still be pinning, but no, it's just trades. Okay, fair enough. So queen e5, bishop d7, knight d5.
Oh yeah, the computer found some line again of here, King takes and b3.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, but this makes like I guess it's not that hard to calculate this, but yeah, it's just like funny just seeing like, okay, we're taking here, then we're gonna have queen c6 check, king d8, rook d1, like, okay, king is getting mated, so computer wins.
Yeah.
That's fine. Knight d5, I mean, it just looks so straightforward. Queen g4.
Yeah, so now I'm going into this endgame up 2 pawns.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and I think that the practical chances of not converting this endgame, just because you're going to have 2 passed pawns eventually on the queen side, are almost 0. I think this is almost 100%.
Yeah, this one looks really winning. Let's go back for a moment. So rook d6, yeah, if black played queen c4, then I guess
You should be getting mated then.
just takes, right? Or maybe this is actually, it's queen c5. Oh, queen c5 here maybe.
Yeah, queen c5 here. So here I wasn't entirely like I didn't have a clear win, but I planned b4. Just trying to chase his queen so I can play bishop takes c6. Only move to defend d6 is this move, and here I was planning just bishop b3, and I'm menacing like all of these captures. Like rook takes d7 is a threat. I think even if he puts a rook on d8, it's a threat, and I felt that my attack would continue here.
Oh, I see. So even if this one we're taking and taking on e6, yeah?
Yeah, and I'm attacking all of his rooks, and there's discovered check, and it's not a good situation for black.
Yeah, it looks horrible. Maybe this was the best try, but this one, it looks hard to meet. I mean, is black really playing bishop c8 here? Like, that would be so sad, but necessary.
Yeah, but this is the kind of thing that he should do. Like this is the like resilient defense that like
Yeah.
a stronger player might put up. Like they're gonna play bishop c8 and make me prove it again.
Right. Yeah, this is where they would go, and okay, you still have to win the game. It is kind of unfair against a low-rated player. Like, you're not gonna panic here, but against a high-rated player, like, the longer you don't win the game, the more you kind of like start to doubt yourself.
Yeah, if it starts feeling bad, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they get that kind of unfair bonus. So let's try to figure this one out. How exactly would we would convert this one?
Okay, I have one idea that's interesting. Just a caveman idea of playing rook d4 or rook d3, just doubling rooks. And I'm claiming that you have no way to bring another piece onto e6.
I mean, honestly, that looks pretty good. Like, just rook e4, and then just you can even move the queen away and then take. Yeah, I mean, black just has like no moves. Like, this one is hanging. Like, this is very sad, and there's no way of doing anything with the rook either.
Yeah, I also have rook g4 potentially as an idea to add pressure.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that one would. Yeah, I think the position just collapses. G5, rook f1, and come in on f6. Nice. No, I think you would convert this one against anyone. I think you would. There's just too many weaknesses. The king is just way too open. Now here, yeah, I mean, it does feel like you maybe could have ended the game in some faster way, like, but
yeah, there's a computer shot here that I had missed.
Queen g5 is of course a very annoying move. We don't really want to allow this one unless like we got in the game, you get 2 pawns, which I think was absolutely fine. So one of my instincts would be to just play king b1 here and be like, okay, we're not trading queens, but
yeah, that move is exactly right. Yeah.
Is this the computer move?
Yeah, yeah, king b1. I like didn't consider it at all. It's like sadistic move.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like, your position is weak, so there's no way you're going to hold it. If you're just relying on this one tactical trick, then yeah, let's just take this away and just bank on the fact that, this has to break through just by the logic of chess.
Yeah.
I guess queen g5 here was the only move I wasn't sure about. Like, okay, challenging my queen. I imagine the computer is just chilling either with queen
I think
d4.
queen c7 looks
Queen c7
chilling.
just looks like super strong as well.
Yeah, threatening rook takes c6. And...
Yeah. So this one is coming, and bishop c6 if we need it. Bishop takes e6. Yeah, actually, I would say this king b1 move is pretty thematic. Just because, like, okay, this was black's only idea, and so we just like take that away, and that's it. But I mean, this was like, to me, this feels very clean.
Yeah, especially since I was low-ish on time here. I had like 7 minutes or something. I felt like this was the like perfect route. Like avoid complications and just go for an easy endgame.
Mm-hmm. No, it looks very straightforward. I don't think black gets any real chances here. I mean, the pawns are just way too weak. And so it looks like, yeah, you didn't have any issues here with the technique. So yeah, I mean, really nice game. I mean, very clean overall. Black definitely could have defended better, but I mean, I think you did your job quite well. Did you have rook f1 check instead of taking the bishop? Oh, let's quickly go there. Rook f1. This is a move.
Maybe king e7.
King e7. Oh yeah. Guess we have this one.
Oh yeah, this is well. Yeah, this is still winning. Queen d7, rook e1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, should be winning. I mean, something like this, it's like you're just rook d1, and yeah, this kind of king almost never survives. Yeah, it looks good. Maybe this one was findable. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those positions where it feels like just everything is winning. I mean, it's an easy position to mess up for that reason, but
maybe rook f1 check. Perhaps he runs this way. Actually, tries to hide on h7.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking this. Takes here. Okay, you can always take on. You can always take on a6, but I mean, at that point, it's like, yeah, why not just force this endgame? Because we get this in the other line. With taking here, black is just getting mated if they don't play queen g5, and so we get this like nice kind of double pawn thing, and yeah, 2 pawns, and now it's like, I mean, this should be like 99% or something win rate, hopefully.
Yeah, the queenside pass pawns are just so strong, and he has no counterplay due to his pawn structure. So,
okay, well let's finish up there. So you'll be continuing with your training plan and playing a lot, it sounds like, this week.
Yep, it'll be a busy week.
Awesome. And we'll be checking in. We're planning on doing the show like every Monday for the near future, so probably we'll be at the same time. We'll be checking in with Todd, maybe going over another game, maybe doing some more problems like this at a certain point, and just seeing where the show takes us. So all right, guys, thanks everyone who tuned in. Thanks for following, and we'll catch you next time. Take care, everybody.
All right, thanks, guys.